Hi, this is Kevin McPartland, Senior Analyst at TABB Group. I'm here with Lee Olesky, the CEO of Tradeweb. The CFTC just last week finally released their full SEF proposal, 200 some odd pages of rules defining what a SEF is and how they'll operate. From your perspective and Tradeweb's perspective, what do you think?
Well, we were anxiously awaiting the rules, and I think there's still an awful lot to be defined beyond the rules, but clearly at this point now we have a rough outline of what to expect in terms of what will be required of SEFs, what the likely market structure will be, what the types of trading protocols will be that are permitted, and I think this is going to create an awful lot of change, but something that we're all now trying to process and digest and prepare ourselves for.
So firstly then, let's focus on what are the good parts of the rules? What do you think they got right and really suits the industry, but then also Tradeweb's business model?
Well, at the top of that list, something that Tradeweb was very interested in having was sufficient flexibility within the rule structure so that companies like Tradeweb could provide customers with a platform that allowed them to do business in a way that worked for them and worked for the market, and not be overly rigorous in terms of defining how business needs to be done from a trading aspect. So that's probably the most important point that we took away from this, is that there's flexibility now to allow for different types of trading models.
So no required order book, no required RFQ, it's a little more left up to the SEF and to the customers of the SEF?
Yes, there's certainly more flexibility, and I think this needs to be further defined, but there's not a mandatory approach to an order book, using an order book. There's flexibility in terms of allowing types of RFQ, streaming prices, and we think that's very important, not just for the way the market will behave initially, but for providing an environment where you can innovate in the future. We think that with technology, globalization, it's really important to allow companies to be creative and provide different types of solutions.
Right, and you need some room to be able to differentiate amongst your competitors and give the market participants a choice as to how they want to trade and in what kind of environment.
Yeah, exactly. And in the end, really what we're all trying to do as service providers, as brokers or platforms, is identify the needs of our clients.
Sure.
Look and see how they do their business, and the reality is on Tradeweb, where we have thousands of customers, people do business differently, and they want to be able to access liquidity in different ways.
So clearly this is, I think, a first step. The CFTC put a lot of requests for comment in the proposal, so there's going to be an iterative process. But what are some of the areas where you think there still needs to be some work and some discussion as to how they've defined it?
Right. So once you get down below the high-level point of flexibility in terms of trading protocols for SEFs, there are a number of areas where we need further definition. So we would look to see even more flexibility in, for example, something like RFQ, where, as it stands right now, the rule is been proposed that you have to go to at least 5 liquidity providers in order to get a price to run an RFQ. Our view is we should have more flexibility there. Granted, it should be more than one from a transparency standpoint, but why not give the customer the flexibility to decide, is a trade better off being processed and executed when you're putting 3 dealers in competition, or 4, or 10, or 8, or whatever the right number is? Give the flexibility to the customer, because there are certain types of orders, certain types of products that you're better off not going to a wider universe in order to get the liquidity and transfer the risk.
Sure. So, like if I want to go to a particular website and just buy that product without doing my homework on Google, then that's my choice, even if maybe the price you ultimately end up with maybe wasn't the best. Is that a good analogy?
I would put it slightly differently, which is there are certain instruments that you don't care that the world knows that you want to buy a 10-year swap, and you might actually think to do a certain small size, you're happy to go out to the whole market and say, anyone can respond to my interest. But then there might be products that are much more less frequently traded, where you don't want the world to know that you're buying a single name credit default swap, and the size that you're doing a transaction. You'd prefer to keep that more of a privately negotiated transaction. pre-trade.
Right. So the impact on the market, it's not that it would just be potentially negative for the buyer, but it could be potentially negative for the price of the security in the market as a whole.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And I think the one last big question that I had in reading the proposal was about the ability to use voice, and that's been a point of discussion really for the last 2 years. So how do you see how they talk about voice trading and how that's allowed?
Well, it seems to me that the voice component, while it still needs a little more definition, there's been some clear parameters set so that a voice transaction can occur when it's a block trade. So if there's a certain size transaction, you can use voice just as you would in any other market, a futures market, et cetera. Also, the type of instrument. So if an instrument that's not cleared, which likely means it's not very commoditized, so it's more structured, more special, that can be done over the phone. Everything else seems to fall into the category of execution on a SEF. So I think that that's a very clear delineation. Now, I think the place where we still have some questions is how much interaction can phone have on a SEF? Sure. Can you have someone assisting someone to put a transaction into the system? Seems like the answer is yes. But who is that person? Is that person working for the SEF? Is it someone who's working at a dealer? There's still a little bit more detail, I think, that needs to be resolved in terms of voice interacting within the electronic environment.
Great. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for the industry's comments, those from Tradeweb as well. And a lot of these issues we'll discuss at our TABB Forum event on January 25th in New York. So we'll get into this in more detail then.
We're looking forward to it.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
You. This is Kevin McPartland, Senior Analyst with TABB Group, here with Olesky, the CEO of Tradeweb. And thanks for watching.